At Vanguard, we know that this is more than just a retirement plan. This is your cappuccino date in Italy, the beach house with the matching bicycles. It's your rental car down memory lane, and weekends reuniting with friends from over the years. This is the future you imagined, and we're here to help you build it. Because at Vanguard, you're more than just an investor. You're an owner. Discover the value of ownership at Vanguard.com. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Vanguard Marketing Corporation Distributor.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today I'm joined by ESPN's Todd Archer as we discuss the team he covers, the Dallas Cowboys, and Sunday's game against Washington. We discuss Micah Parsons and what he does so well, the return to health for both Dallas's offense and defense. How much impact will that make? Does he think Ezekiel Elliott would be back to his old ways now that he's had a little time off? You can follow Todd on Twitter at Todd Archer, and you can read both our work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about this final stretch for Washington, going against 5 division opponents. It's going to be fun to see how this all unfolds. What I also know is that Sunday will be Washington's biggest home game with fans in attendance in a few years. This should be a fun atmosphere. Before I play my conversation, here's my little prediction. Logic should dictate I go one way with this pick. Washington continues to be banged up. They lost Montez Sweat this week, Logan Thomas. We don't know, and then Sweat, of course, has been out for 4 weeks, but they thought they'd have him back this week. We don't yet know if J.D. McKissick and Jamin Davis will play because of concussions. They were out there working on a limited basis today. That's a good sign. Or even Landon Collins with his foot injury. He said he's 90%. I think he's going to be good to go. Meanwhile, Dallas is getting healthier. Probably the healthiest they've been in a long time, and Archer will talk about that in a few minutes. Washington quarterback Taylor Heinicke has gotten away with some dropped interceptions in too many games, and Dallas is a team that doesn't drop those chances, especially Davon Diggs. We've all seen what the kid has done this year, so if you can beat him, but he'll also beat you, so you better be careful. But I've stopped trying to figure out logically what might happen when this team is playing, though I still think some of that logic definitely applies here and needs to be applied. Washington is playing damn good football, not perfect football, which means they've been getting away with some things, or they're still capable of playing better. Here's why I'm going to pick Washington on a 1-point win. Their ability to run the ball has powered this streak. For them to win, that must continue, and it can. Now, Dallas struggles against the run, allowing nearly 4.5 yards per carry. That's a lot. Some of that, maybe a lot of that, stems from missing key players along the line, and that's a big concern. Their return is a concern for me this week. Those players should be back. How does that impact the game? But Washington ran the ball well on this group last year. They averaged 5.2 yards per carry in the 2 games. They were over 5 yards in each of those games. This is a better defense than last season, but more so from being opportunistic rather than being some sort of a shutdown unit. And again, you look at the defense of the run stats, they're not that great. And while Micah Parsons is a dynamic player, they know they can run at him to neutralize him in the ground game. Now, that also depends if you know where he's lining up, because he could be at linebacker, he could be at end. You don't want Parsons chasing, and so I think what I would do with him is really get him to move. He will move, and he's got really good anticipation skills. The motion that they've been using, fool the eyes, press the hole, then go. That's what you need to do with him. If Washington if they run the ball well and can avoid 3rd and longs, then it has a chance to win its 5th straight game. In the win streak, here are some stats. Washington has had 58 third downs. 27 have been for 4 yards or less, and they've converted half of their third downs in the streak. Before the streak, they faced 98 third downs. Only 39 were for 4 yards or less. They converted just 34.7% overall. That was bad. To beat this D and to avoid killer mistakes, they must avoid 3rd and longs. If they get into too many 3rd and longs, it's going to be a long day for Washington. I don't think that Taylor Heinicke is going to be ducking out of the grasp of Micah Parsons. I'm betting that they'll continue to run the ball well. I think I've told you how much I like what they're doing in the run game. They used to be primarily gap scheme, a lot of power. They've used a lot of outside zone lately to diversify, and it's working. They use a lot of motion that fools the eyes, like I said earlier, and causes shifts and creates better chances and better blocking angles. Look for that to continue. Why wouldn't it? And what about without Logan Thomas? Clearly, he's a huge loss. Clearly, huge. But what they'll do is go back to a decent tight end target in Ricky Seals-Jones, so the tight ends can still be a factor in the pass game, just a different sort of factor. But one thing to know is that the coaches felt at times that Heineke would stick too long on Thomas while waiting for him to get open on his routes, because he trusted him to get open, because he felt like he would, because he felt like he was a good security target or security blanket and a target for him. So they'd wait for him to get free. But because of that, because he'd stick too long on him, by the time he'd work his way to his next, to work through his progression, it was too late. So what the feeling is, the positive, I shouldn't say positive, the spin for them will be that he'll go through his progressions quicker. And that would get a chance more for guys like Terry McLaurin. That's one of the reasons why they felt like McLaurin's opportunities were less the last couple games, because that Heineke was sticking too long with Thomas. Again, you want Thomas on the field, but if you're going to look for something, well, how can it, not how does it help him, but how do they adjust without him? This is one way. The other feeling is that Curtis Samuel is holding up well, and therefore will get a lot more chances. Remember that bubble to him that nearly broke it last week? Well, that play excited the hell out of these coaches because of how close it was to being a really big play. File that away. I don't know yet about McKissick. I just know he was practicing again on Thursday, albeit limited, but they are going to need him in this one. And especially like you get into third and long and they're starting to bring in some pressure, that's when you want McKissick back there helping with that. Defensively, the key will be stopping that passing attack. Todd can fill you in more about how Dallas has looked there, but they will be healthier. Washington has defended the pass better, and a lot of it is because of how they've changed their tactics. In the first 8 games, Washington played a lot more man, around 40%. In the win streak, maybe 35%. In the win streak, it's back to heavy zone looks, probably 83% of the time in zone. That's according to ESPN Stats and Info. That's obviously give or take, I'm going to say, but the point is it's been a lot more. They've done that because they're also sending more pressure on third downs. The feeling was that with Montez Sweat and Chase Young, they generate pressure with just 4 linemen, so they weren't sending as much pressure on certain downs. That wasn't happening enough, in part because of coverage and because teams adjusted. They're now a lot harder to predict as far as who's coming and what coverage they'll play. It might be zone, but what kind of zone? Watch how they rotate after the snap. It's really been a nice thing to see as far as the development of the defense. I'll have more numbers for you. Here you go. On third downs in the win streak, they've sent an extra rusher on 48.5% of the time compared to 29% with Sweat and Young in the game. They know they have to generate more pressure, and they have. Now, it's not resulting in a ton of sacks and turnovers, but it is resulting in guys feeling more uncomfortable, getting off the field a lot better. Their third down defense has been really good, and these are part of the reasons why. I've heard from some fans who wonder if the issue was Sweat and Young. Keep in mind, they've adjusted to losing those players. It's not like they're playing the same style. They're not. They're not just going with 4 rushers and saying, go get them, and Smith, Williams, and Tuhill are going and getting them. That's not happening. But they're using guys in the right way, too. They're sending, I like what some of the backups are doing, some of the energy they bring. Daniel Wise, for example. But Sweat and Young drew a lot more attention in the form of chips, double teams. And they didn't take advantage of that as a defense. I think when those guys come back, I think you'd see a different tactic. When Sweat comes back, I don't think you're going to see a lot less blitzing. I think you may see a lot more pressure because you have Sweat out there now. And I do like what those other ends have done. I think they've used him well, but this is not an apples-to-apples comparison as far as what they're facing or what they're doing. You don't see the double teams chips on the ends now, but they're also doing a better job with fooling lines as to who is rushing and where. So it's really unlocked some creativity maybe with the coaches. I don't know if it's creative or more just a necessity, but they're doing it. It's led to, and I do like how Smith, Williams, and Tuhill, they do their jobs, and that's good. But all this stuff has led to multiple pressures and incompletions, more so than sacks. They're 6th and 3rd down conversions during the streak. They were last before the streak. That's why earlier in the year, the problem wasn't just the QBs they were facing, it was how they were playing. I do think they wondered if Jerry Jones was playing some head games earlier this week when he said about how using maybe an extra O-lineman in the run game with Elliott coming back and being healthier. Would they go to a run-based attack? I think they're still expecting Dak Prescott to be throwing the ball a lot. They're aware that this is not the Elliott of old, even if his knee is feeling better, nor is this the line that used to dominate everyone. but they'll have to limit those receivers after the catch, and they'll have to make sure Prescott does not kill them with his legs. Yes, he's 7-1 against them. He hasn't faced this team or this defense, so really that stats, it sounds great, as Ron Rivera would say. It's interesting, not even close to being important. It's really kind of irrelevant. During the streak, Washington has done a good job causing hesitation in quarterbacks such as Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr. I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do that against Prescott as well. This game is tricky because I don't see Washington being able to keep up if Dallas gets on a roll offensively. If Dallas gets ahead, I think you're going to see if they get ahead by 10-0, it's going to be a really, really difficult game for Washington. If it can control the ball and the clock, then it will be a good day. If not, it's going to be a long day. I think Washington splits with Dallas this year, so I'm going to give the fans the home game. Anyway, that's way too much for me. So let's take a look at the other side. After this break, I'll be back with ESPN's Todd Archer. What does he think about Micah Parsons, and does he think Elliott will be back to his old self?
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football is back, and the best bet you can make is downloading the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It doesn't matter if you're new to gambling or an old pro, FanDuel has something for everyone. And as an official sports betting partner of the NFL, you know your bets are safe. There's also never been a better time to use FanDuel, because right now, you'll get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. You can even turn a small wager into a big payday with a same-game parlay bet. Just sign up with the promo code Spotify to place your first bet risk-free on FanDuel Sportsbook. Download FanDuel today. 21 plus and present in New Jersey. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
Welcome back. Now here's my conversation with Todd Archer. Well, Todd, this is exactly what we thought 4 weeks ago, that Washington would be playing Dallas with a chance to cut this division lead to one game. That's probably what you were thinking too, right?
Absolutely. And they beat Minnesota on Halloween with their backup quarterback to get to 6-1. I go, well, just thank God they're building this cushion in the division right now, because they're going to fall apart here in a little bit and make it the last 6 weeks or 5 weeks of the season interesting.
Yeah, and then you have this team streaking, which is what everybody expected when they were 2-6 on a 4-game skid at the bye. That's, I know I was thinking that, hey, this looks like a team ready to go on a hot streak and be a factor down the stretch. But, it's funny because Washington is banged up and still being banged up. Dallas looks like it's getting healthier. And you had a story on this on ESPN.com about that. And what is their health status? Are they a team that's positioned well down the stretch with guys they have coming back?
Yeah, they'll have Randy Gregory playing for the first time in 4 weeks, coming off a calf strain. Neville Gallimore, defensive tackle that showed a lot of promise in the preseason, playing for the first time all year. He hyperextended his elbow in a preseason game. DeMarcus Lawrence on his second game back after breaking his foot in week 2 in practice. Zeke with the time off from the Thursday to Thursday games, that helps him. Tyron Smith, time off with an ankle injury, that helps him. So they're health-wise, they appear to be as good as they could possibly be entering this game. It doesn't mean they're going to play well. Right. That's one thing McCarthy talked to us about. He's like, look, I'm not worried about getting the guys back and everything's going to be fine. I'm worried how I'm going to incorporate these guys and get them up to speed. So that's really where they are right now. This is, they won against New Orleans. Taysom Hill throws 4 picks. I mean, you better win that game. They've lost 3 or 4 entering that one. This is not a team that comes into this game riding a hot streak, even if they have all these guys coming back.
Well, it's funny because I just saw this team shut down that Raiders offense, and Dallas had a little bit harder time with that Raiders offense just a couple of weeks ago. What have you seen from that defense? Because, it looked like they got off to a hot start, but where are they at right now in terms of how they're playing, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, they're playing the way they played all year, to be honest with you. They've given up a ton of big plays the entire season. Dan Quinn has really remade himself. He's not this cover three guy that you think of what Seattle did for years, single high, all that kind of stuff. They play man coverage, and that leaves you susceptible to big plays. I think they've allowed 48 pass plays of 20 yards or more. This is what they do. Trayvon Diggs will pick off 9 passes, but he'll give up some stuff too. Anthony Brown, that Raiders game you talked about, had 4 pass interference penalties. He only had 1 penalty going into that game. Yeah. So, I mean, this is kind of what they are. They'll make some timely stops. They'll get the ball back. And Micah Parsons has been a revelation as a rookie, and probably a guy that should win the Defensive Rookie of the Year award, hands down. I don't know how you can make an argument for somebody else over him.
I don't think you can.
And probably should be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, if not win it, at least be in the conversation with what he's been able to do. So this defense is, for the Cowboys to win, they still need their offense to pick it up. And that's been the issue really since Dak's come back from the calf injury. They've not been up to speed in any part of their game.
With sticking with the defense and Micah Parsons, because before this team played the Raiders, and go back and watch the game and all that, and I wasn't wowed by the Dallas defense for some of the reasons you said, but I couldn't help but, like, you're just mesmerized by Micah Parsons. I mean, he was all over and just fantastic, and he covers up a lot of sins. What's been the most surprising part for you in watching him play?
Him having success wherever they've put him. Like, usually, it's okay. You tell a rookie, hey, just rush the passer. And in the last couple of weeks, he's been mainly a defensive end, designated pass rusher, whatever you want to call him. That's what he's mostly played. But he's been an off-the-ball linebacker. Majority of the snaps, I would say, he's played this season and excelled there. His closing speed, I mean, I've said this a couple of times. I don't want to say it's like DeMarcus Ware, because Ware's going to go in the Hall of Fame here in a few months.
Right.
But it's on that same kind of deal, maybe even better, just how he closes so quickly on guys. Taysom Hill is an unbelievable athlete. Yeah. And Parsons had a sack last week on a big third down play that Hill couldn't do anything. And he forces a punt. They're in field goal range, forces a punt when it was still a game. His closing speed is exceptional. And you have to give the Cowboys coaches, Dan Quinn, George Edwards, a lot of credit for keeping teams guessing as to where he's going to be as a linebacker, as a defensive end, strong side linebacker, whatever you want to call it. He's been, like I said, a revelation in how well he's played.
And it's amazing because the guy didn't even play college ball last year. I mean, so he's doing
this. Playing Xbox at this. I asked him after the Kansas City game, what were you doing last November? He's like, playing Xbox and training. So maybe, that's what the next scouting reports of these teams need to do. Like, what were you doing? I was playing football. Well, how come you weren't playing Xbox? Go and play some Xbox.
Do you think those coaches are surprised at how well he's doing?
They have to be. And but I think when they get to this point of the season, the surprise is probably worn off a little bit because it's so late and he's done it for so many weeks. But I don't think I remember we talked to Jerry Jones the night of the draft, and he said, look, how he's really going to help us as a rookie is as a designated pass rusher. Then he shows up to the rookie mini camp and he does well. And then he gets the regular mini camp, and then he gets training camp, and they keep adding things. And all of a sudden he's calling defenses. So they've been unafraid to put more on his plate, but usually you don't do that with rookies, right? I mean, you kind of want to ease him in, don't put a lot of burden on him. They keep putting more and more on him, and he keeps responding.
How much is he, because the big talk here with Chase Young, Montez Sweat was all the double teams and the chips, all that. How much extra attention is he seeing, and how often is he beating that?
I wish I had this stats and info group that could help me with some of those numbers that, we rely on for our stories at ESPN. Yeah. But
in the eye test,
he gets a little bit of it, but I wouldn't say it's all the time. And that's really been, they've not had Gregory for the last 4 games. DeMarcus Lawrence was out until last week against New Orleans. So he's got Terrell Basham on one side, Dorrance Armstrong on one side. Why wouldn't they have doubled them or shipped them? And there are times that they have, but I can't say like they're always throwing a tight end his way. They're always throwing a chip his way. They're sliding protection that way. That's just not been the case.
Well, it sounds like their ability to move him around too kind of helps negate some of that as well, because he does line up a lot of different places.
Yeah, and now that with Gregory coming back and Lawrence back, I think you'll see him probably shift back into a more of a linebacker role, and in third down situations, pressure that way as opposed to doing it every single down. And I talked to your good buddy Matt Bowen because of you. Thank you for the number there. And you say, look, you don't need to make him just a defensive end or just a linebacker. Play him in both spots, and then in third downs, put his hand on the ground and let him go. He thought he might. You can make the case that if Myles Garrett is the number one edge rusher in the league, Micah Parsons right now is number 2. And when he said that, I literally said out loud, "Wow!" Like,
yeah.
Because when you see it up close, we have tunnel vision on what we're covering. We don't look at it from a league perspective that he does. And I was like, "Holy cow, that's pretty impressive."
Yeah, especially as he studies it too. So, with the offense, is it just the receivers have not been together? I think how many games is that? 3 games this year or something like that for the receivers
They've
together?
started and finished together 2 or 3 games. So I think 3. Let's say 3 because that doesn't sound as bad.
So how much of the offensive rhythm, I guess, a function of the lack of time together versus anything else?
I'm not going to put it on that because Dak didn't have, he didn't have Gallup against New England and they put up 600 yards against the Patriots. Sure. So I think it's more a function of their line play. And I hate to just boil it down to line play because unlike you, I don't get bogged down into that kind of mumbo jumbo. But their line play has been inconsistent and they can't run the ball anymore. And Zeke is banged up. And maybe they should give the ball to Tony Pollard more. But when Pollard has broken a couple of big plays, but more often than not, he's getting the same 3 yards of carry that Zeke is getting. So to me, that's a fundamental issue with the running game and the tight ends and the blocking and all that. Just and the scheme has not worked together. And then when the pass game, well, all that, as we know, works off of each other, especially from the Cowboys' perspective. If you can run the ball well, then you force teams to change things defensively, and you can attack down the field. That's just not happened. I don't know if I can say it's because Gallup's missed 7 games and Cooper missed 2 games and Lamb missed 1. They had one drive against the Saints where on 3 or 4 straight plays or 3 or 4 plays, Cooper had a 41 catch, Lamb had a 33-yard. It turned into a run. It was a bubble screen, and then Gallup caught a touchdown. Like, oh, there's the Cowboys offense. So that's what they still have the possibility and potential of doing, but they got to get out of their own way in some respects. And Kellen Moore and truthfully, Dak needs to play better. He's not played as well coming back from that calf injury. 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he'll admit it. Like he needs to play better. So this will be a big test for him, and I think he's lost 1 game against your football team.
I think it's
7-1. I think.
Yeah. He and Daniel Jones own these guys.
You better be owned by Dak than by Daniel Jones.
Well, I know. I think so. With coming back from the cap, is there anything that you can see where you say, okay, this is a little bit different with him? Is he off on his throws? Is he not using the legs as much, or just doesn't look as good yet?
Not using his legs as much. Yeah, I was looking at this in the last. Where is it? My number? I'll find my numbers. Since the calf injury, he's had 8 carries for 21 yards. That's in 5 games for him. Before that, he had 22 carries for 70 yards. So the yard, it's like a little bit more than a half a yard difference per carry. But he doesn't seem to be moving around as much. I don't want to say as well, but just as much. And I think his footwork has been off on some throws, which has led to. What's weird though, John, is you look at his completion percentage. It's still up there. It's still 67, 68%. But there's just some throws you're like, that was an easy throw. Why did he miss that one? And then he'll come back the next play and boom, it's a dime on a CeeDee Lamb or Gallup down the sideline.
He had some throws against the Raiders that were dimes. Yeah, I mean, some of those to Gallup down the side. Yeah, I mean, exactly.
And that came after he missed Noah Brown on a slant, where it's like, that's the easier throw, not the one down there. So.
With Elliott, do you think how much will this time off help him? Is that, is it something that they feel that it will give him a big help, or is it just a hope it helps him?
they think it will help them, and it probably is a little bit of a hope there too. But medically, it's improved. He had this since October. He's had 100-yard games since he's had this, and I don't know, but I don't know if a bruise is something. Well, just give him a week off and he's going to be fine. So that's probably why they didn't rest him. They probably just wanted to get to this mini bye as they look at it and say, okay, this will help him, because they've cut back on his snaps. He would play maybe 80% of the snaps in the first 6, 7, 8 games of the season. He's played about 60% of the snaps, 65% of the snaps since they've really tried to track it and monitor that and cut down his workload. But again, there's just something fundamentally wrong with their run game right now, regardless of who's running it. Yeah, Pollard's had a big play on a wildcat play at Kansas City and had the 58-yard touchdown, but the down-to-down, play-to-play, here's our schemed running game, it's just not what it needs to be. And they need better play from their center, Biotis. They need better play from their left guard, Connor McGovern, after he took over for Connor Williams. And then he better play from the 3 guys we all know, Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, and La'el Collins. They all need to play better. I'm curious to see what they do at right tackle if Terrence Steele goes back to being the starter at right tackle. But I'm sorry, there's just not a world where Terrence Steele is better than La'el Collins. I think they're overthinking that stuff.
And last topic here, do you think that they're ready for the runaway Taylor Heineke freight train this weekend?
Tony Romo light, is that what you're saying?
There you go. Yeah. How about that?
Look, there'll be big plays available because that's what the Cowboys do. So McLaurin will have some big plays. Dan Quinn was talking about Samuel being back. Obviously not having the tight ends out, right? He's not.
Yeah, Logan Thomas is done. That's a big loss for them. But they get another guy, Ricky Seals-Jones, back, but Thomas is the guy.
So that'll help the Cowboys. And Gibson has been running the ball well from the games that I've seen. And you know, when they've struggled here a little bit against the, Taysom Hill ran pretty well. You're not gonna see Heineke do those. His stuff isn't design runs like with Hill.
No, it's not. His stuff is getting out of trouble, and that's where I'll be curious to see if he can get away from Micah Parsons a few times. But that's what he does: gets out of trouble and extends plays more than just runs by design. And it's Gibson with the run game is the power.
And you trust the Cowboys defense, but you still need to verify it, right? Yeah. And I think that was always going to be the case this season. If they could be middle of the road, that was fine. And I think their numbers are probably middle of the road, but they're taking the ball away. They're doing a pretty decent job on third downs. So, but there'll be opportunities for them to make plays, and will probably be hostile territory for the home team because we'll know there'll be more Cowboys fans there than Washington fans. That's been the case here lately.
Yes, it has. There may be a couple more because I think people actually are getting excited, but we'll see. So, Todd, that's 15 minutes. I told you. We're done.
Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by Timberland. The Timberland boot was built to keep you warm, keep you dry. Then they passed it on for you to build something. You took it from Buffalo and Philly to Chi-Town and New York, from London to Paris, all the way to Shanghai, around the block and around the world. They built a boot. You made it an icon. Timberland, build forward. Share your Timberland story and tag them at Timberland.
This episode is brought to you by Candy Crush Saga. The holidays can be pretty hectic, so take a little time for yourself with the ultimate holiday treat, the classic Match 3 puzzle Candy Crush Saga. And right now, you can catch the limited time event Sweet Surprise Season and win sweet daily rewards like a super rare party booster and up to 10 gold bars. Don't miss out. Play Sweet Surprise Season and Candy Crush Saga and crush it this holiday season now until January 1st. Download from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Todd for joining me, and thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back with another episode after Sunday's game. Talk to you next time.